Welcome back to Hacker Hangouts. It has been far too long, and I realized we're in the 12 days left to Defcon 32, and it hit me yesterday. But I had this incredible experience. So, I'm going to start it off here. I was working out. You knew I was going to drop it. I was working out, but I was sitting there, and as I was talking with my cousin. They were there as well. And I was laughing because here I am complaining. I'm complaining to her about like, we bought this property. I'm really excited. But then I had the wheel right in front of like the mower, the deck part. Again, I'm getting very technical if anyone's wondering. The wheel in front of the deck part came disconnected, went underneath. And I haven't even been riding it an hour. And it just obliterated the wheel. I'm complaining to her about this. And this was like on a Friday afternoon where I snuck away and I was going to do a workout, which because that's a thing apparently I do now. And I'm talking to her complaining about the new mower on my new property while I'm like dodging work to go do a workout. And then I started saying, I have to start prepping for Defcon. And at this very moment, an AJR song came on, which is an incredible song, which is Tiny Violin. And the lyrics go somewhere like, my father fought in World War II. He was such a noble dude. My father fought fires, and he was, fires. But I bored my therapist by playing my tiny violin. And it just hit me. It's like, I have zero right to complain about any of this stuff because it's all good stuff. And I was laughing in the midst of the Crowdstrike nonsense going on and everything like that. I realized we have not streamed in way too long. And I'm like, but at least we have Defcon. And it hit me. I have my tiny violin. I was playing it and at the same time going, I have Defcon. And I realized my whole year, I don't know about you, my whole year revolves around Defcon somehow. And it's a beautiful thing.
I'll say it used to. And in the past couple of years, my life has been somewhat turmoil between, I've switched jobs multiple times in a few years. And that is chaos. I got a dog, all those things. So like my priorities have shifted a little bit. And yet there's always Defcon. There almost wasn't Defcon, but we do have Defcon. At least we have Defcon.
Yeah, that is.
And I'm very excited to go and hang out. I'm doing my planning just now this year to go, so it's going to be a low key year for me. I think we're going to go check it out. Make sure we capture the whole con on the photo team. Make sure we check out how it, capture the good, the bad, the ugly of the new gig space essentially. And maybe I'll bring my guitar. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it shifts every year. I mean, the first time we went, it was like a little bit of video. And that was a whole lot of video. Yeah. And that's a little less video. But the thing, what's really funny is like seeing either one of us without a camera is pretty rare. But photo is like the relaxation phase. And I think this year we're pulling on, or at least my plan is to do more photo and then video versus all video and then some photo. I'm sure I'll do both, but for the most part, I'm not putting, I don't want to put pressure on myself to go, I need to do all the video things. And I think in doing so, we'll probably end up doing more.
I think this year, in a lot of ways, because we're in the new space and we're all under one roof, there's going to be a lot more opportunity to just keep your eye open for interesting things to take pictures of, right? Like with everyone under one room, under one roof, and mostly in one room, you're going to have a bunch of people that are interacting with each other that typically haven't, right? Like if the blue team village is now right next to the IoT village or whatever the map ends up being, I have no idea. I think I've looked at it once. Whatever the map ends up being, you're going to have a bunch of people that are interacting and commingling in ways that they may not necessarily have done so before. And also the logistics of like going from one part of the conference to the other is so much simpler. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for shenanigans.
Well, in Las Vegas Convention Center is ginormous, and they're used to having massive amounts of people. So I don't think you're going to get that meat grinder impact, which every time we go to a new place, like Paris Bally's, Rio had this, Caesars as well, where there was just like hallways where they were like, oh, this looked big, but once everyone got in here, there's no way this works. And I think they've dealt with giant crowds, and while you probably get some parts, I think it's way easier to fix versus, hey, we can't move this wall, where there they definitely can.
Well, I think anyone who's been going for, we'll say, the past 6 to 8 years knows in Bally's Paris, there's that one hallway as you're trying to go from Bally's to Paris or backwards. There's that one hallway that turns into this giant choke point that is right in the restaurants. So you're also bothering everyone who's in the restaurants, who are probably also con goers. And like, in some senses, it's fun because you always have the goons shouting, make a hole, and all those things. And in other senses, if you're trying to go from one place to another quickly, it's like the most frustrating experience ever. And hopefully, I'm not going to say we've done away with that, but like, hopefully that won't be a big problem, because it's all in one place now, right? And we don't have those choke points, or hopefully we won't. I don't think we will. The question is whether or not we're going to have insane lines, and whether the design of the space has taken that into account.
I mean, I would also argue, though, like the Caesars was probably, here is the space we have, here's the best way to lay it out. Where Las Vegas Convention Center, it's like, here's this one giant open room, how do we lay this out? And I'm guessing Las Vegas Convention Center has a whole event coordinator whose only job is to help answer that question, lay things out, and say you could do it here, 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 and here. I'm pumped, though. I am counting down the days. I'm excited because one of my employees I've never met in life in person before. We've interacted for the past like year, and I've never met him. So at Defcon, I'm actually going to meet him in person, which is super weird, which I'm pumped about.
Yeah, that'll be a blast. So I think we should talk about Defcon, and I seem to be having connection issues.
Your audio is coming through fine. Your camera looks like a potato, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I am a potato. I'm Irish. It's good. We're just going back to my roots. Get it. So let's talk about Defcon. In particular, I want to talk about some of the interesting states of the talks. But before we get there, let's talk about the dumpster fire that is Crowdstrike and my camera, apparently.
But I'm going to throw this one out there.
The Crowdstrike situation is fascinating.
Well, I'm going to throw it out here. We called that. I called this one because we explicitly said, we said third-party software integrating, and then third-party software on the kernel level running on that low of a level. In the piece I always called out with Crowdstrike, specifically in any one of these SaaS products, is they don't start off as an enterprise network. No network ever starts off as, let's go create an enterprise network. It starts off with, I'm a small startup. How can I improve my small startup? And then we get some more money in, and then how can we slowly secure our network? And security is always the one going around behind it afterwards and trying to build up security and trying to build up development practices. And I think this massively highlights a huge thing, which you have legitimately Crowdstrike, which is a startup with not strong development practices. Are you having connection issues? Go and connect to your phone. We'll see how that one works. I can go off on this rant a little bit more. But I think we have this whole segment of networks when they become more and more enterprise like built. All of a sudden, we have to go back in time. I'm going to drop Gowrie for a second, and then when he comes back in, here we go. Oh, wow. Much better. You want to do a test on your audio, make sure it works?
We're good. Sorry. Oh. Continue with Crowdstrike, startup.
Yeah, in short, that it's a startup that then slowly has to get built up with security. And I think this shines a massive light on one. I get the idea that they have to get like new signatures out. They have to get new signatures out. And because of the layer it runs, they kind of throw those things in a sys file, and then it gets loaded in. The kicker is, like, in some ways it has to go out, but even like Android, Google Play Store, you can do a slow rollout. Go, let's push it out to 10,000 devices, 20,000 devices. Like let's even if like I understand time is of the essence with a lot of attacks and things like that, but even an hour or 2 hours would have shown like, oh, we're all of these agents, Falcon agent is going down and not coming back up. What? Why is that not common practice? It will become common practice.
I mean, yeah. So I feel like if you were to talk to major hyperscalers, we'll say like Microsoft or Google or whoever, they probably have a lot of these types of things already set up for their own fleet of computers, right? Because they've been through this. And you can take a very aviation minded approach to this where it's like the reason why those things exist is because someone effed up previously. So CrowdStrike is going through their, oh, we should probably self-regulate in some sense and have a checklist that we go through before we hit the ship it button. And yeah, I mean, you were right earlier in your rant, if you will. We totally talked about this and we totally called it, and in saying that like antivirus in general, and I'm not saying CrowdStrike is not your Norton of the world or whatever. A lot of these that have kernel components to it present themselves as a risk to their users. And I feel like most people don't really understand it. I think they understand it now, thanks to CrowdStrike. I'm sure Delta understands it very well, Delta Airlines. And we'll get to that. But yeah, the risk to users when you have these agents on your machine where they're not tested as part of the operating system, but instead as third-party add-ons, that is a huge risk, and it's hard to quantify that risk. And this demonstrates how hard it is to quantify that risk, right? And so, you know, if you go look at CrowdStrike's stock, I think they've lost like 30 or 33% in the past week.
It really does show you some of the stock prices for some of these, like Snowflake's and other ones. Snowflake's is massively overvalued for what it is and what they pull in. But here's the thing: is it also shines the light on, like, remember when like early days AWS went down and half the internet went off, and then all of a sudden someone's like, well, we have to do multi-cloud. We should have our failover not in another realm, not maybe another region of AWS, but they're like, we need to start building up multi-cloud interface. This is where like Snowflake and other like multi-cloud, where you can, like, serverless was one of them. Not serverless, the technology. There's a actual serverless framework which is made so you can deploy stuff across cloud, so you could fail over between clouds. But AWS went down, half the internet went off, and we said, oh no, that's bad. We need to like fix that. And then Cloudflare goes offline. And then we're like, oh no, we have to fix that. And we need to like separate that between Route 53 and other ones. And now, like, Falcon goes off, CrowdStrike does this, and half the world feels like it goes offline. And you got to see, like, and what was super interesting to me, and I have zero evidence to support this whatsoever. At the same time this happened, a big chunk of Azure went down, and I suspect, again, zero evidence on this whatsoever. I suspect that Azure, Microsoft uses CrowdStrike internally and is not allowed to disclose the fact. Either CrowdStrike's not allowed to disclose the fact and Microsoft's not allowed to disclose the fact. And the reason they went down was because they had the CrowdStrike issue internally. They can't disclose it for marketing reasons and all of that. Like, many people uses it.
Yeah, this is all speculation. So just to be clear, neither of us knows anything. So pure speculation. Or some critical piece of the command and control structure utilizes it, or depends on a service that utilizes it. And so this is the like the Node.js including packages, and then one of those packages breaks and the whole internet blows up, right? Like, this is basically, it's really hard to unwind that from somebody on the outside of, you know, actually dealing with the problem as to exactly what happened. And it's entirely possible that like that was a cascading failure. You know, CrowdStrike started blue screening boxes, and that caused other systems to start blowing up in unexpected ways, right?
Hey,
Skycoach.
this is actually also one of the reasons why IT and OT is like operational technology, like SCADA systems or SCADA systems, whatever, however you want to pronounce it, PLCs and things like that. Not all of those can have Falcon on it or can CrowdStrike. A lot like the Linux systems didn't have issues, but there's a reason why there's completely different protection mechanisms on the IT side, which is what typically CrowdStrike goes on, versus OT, specifically for a reason like this, which is, I do want to say unprecedented in some ways, but in the same way, not really unprecedented. It just shows that, gosh, it is amazing to me. Like, so I designed that piece of software called Baker Street. It's called Baker Street. It's for my company. We use it. And I am on the level of paranoid security because I've done the security on web applications to now go, I need to program these things in. I'm at you're kernel developer and you know this thing's sitting on the kernel side. Like, what type of protections would you put in place? Again, assuming hindsight's 2020.
So that's a very hard question. Okay. And it gets to be very technical. The hard part about it is this is a kernel module, right? This isn't like, oh, I have a piece of software that is utilizing the kernel. Functionally, when you install these drivers, they become part of the kernel, right? So they have, for the most part, like permissions. The idea of a user level inside of the kernel is not a thing, right? You just have complete control over the hardware because you need it, right? You're able to turn interrupts off. You're able to talk directly with hardware. You can use whatever interface the kernel provides you. There's limits to this, and I don't want to go too far into it. Like, you could run some of these things inside a virtual machine and segregate it from the main kernel, detect crashes, try to recover. That's what you start to see now when you see like NVIDIA driver failures and your machine just like crashes whatever you're doing and then it exits out, but then you see a driver failure, but your machine doesn't completely blow up. It's been isolated in some way, usually within some kind of like thin virtual machine, but kind of besides the point. From a security perspective, this is why, and we won't just pick on Microsoft. We'll also pick on some distributions like Canonical and Ubuntu and Red Hat. They have driver attestation mechanisms, aka in order to get your driver into their repos, you have to have it signed. And in order to get it signed, Microsoft, for example, has a whole method you have to go through where you have to submit your driver, potentially your code, depending on what it's doing, and have it validated by their software stack. And that is the type of security that we're talking about. It's like, hey, let us review your driver before we allow it on our system. But once it's in, there's not a whole lot the kernel can do to protect itself from a bad driver. There are some techniques people have come up with, and they are deployed. But at the end of the day, if you like seg fault, if you double fault, if you machine check when you're talking to hardware, if you do any of that, blue screen of death. Like that is the result of a driver going bad. So, and this is why, I always talk about it in terms of intrusion detection systems versus intrusion prevention systems, right? CrowdStrike's driver is to an extent an intrusion prevention system. But when an intrusion prevention system fails horribly, it turns into a self-DDoSing event, which is exactly what happened, right? It blows up the entire infrastructure because you have a critical failure in a critical piece of code.
Well, and the thing which complicates it, though, like this is not just like, oh, well, they could just get the attestation from Microsoft. Falcon has that. Falcon absolutely has that attestation. It has been checked out of Microsoft. It's signed by Microsoft. The problem is if they hard code all the signatures into it, every single time they go, okay, this is a critical signature, conflicker is on the loose, whatever, insert malware that they've now created a signature for, or understanding, or however to detect it, they can't push it in without re-signing the whole thing.
That tends to not be how these things operate, right? Like you, as Dave in chat said, this is exactly what TPMs are for. The core code is what it has attestation, and that code is signed to ensure that the routines that are going into the kernel are not being modified by external software. So you won't be able to load a maliciously modified a driver, essentially.
Mhm.
What the driver actually does and consumes. In this case, my understanding, and I don't have a ton of details, but I picked up a few things. The fix for this is like go in and remove some config file from the file
Yeah.
system
So
so it doesn't load. And
what
the
it
driver may
is
still load. Go ahead.
Oh no, I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say what it is what you have to delete is that they have these .sys files, but they're not kernel drivers. What they are is the .sys files are effectively how they update their heuristics and
Yeah.
signatures. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the things you had to delete because there was this is where there's two massive pieces of conflicting. The blue screen of death was that they had a null pointer, that they were just legitimately doing that. That's what the blue screen of death was showing for everyone. However, their fix was that they put a security mechanism in place to detect name pipes, and that name pipe thing was causing this conflict because it would load it in and it would kind of like
Yeah.
defend against
So
itself type of thing.
those files are not necessarily required to be signed. And this
Yeah,
is
correct.
the thing I think most people do not really comprehend about what security in terms of a kernel module realistically means. In order to interact with the driver in any way, you typically need root privileges, which is effectively the same as being God on the box, right? Like if you have root, you're good. You can do whatever you want. You effectively have complete control over the kernel, more or less. And so what you typically have is you have a user land component and a kernel driver component. And the user land component has increased privileges with the ability to talk to the driver. And that means it can send whatever input it wants into that driver. And in this case, it's one of those .sys files. And they probably have some encryption and security around those things so they can't be modified easily. And that can be detected. But what that means is you still have user land information being pumped into a driver that has complete control over the system. And the result of that is whatever behavior that the driver decides to do. If this sounds a lot like a rootkit, that's because this is how rootkits are made, right? Like it's very much a similar technology.
In pretty much how a lot of privilege escalation happens during pen
Yeah.
tests is finding something which has this type of privilege. Heck, as an attacker, this is exactly what you're looking for. Something that has this higher level of privilege that I can jump into and then inject code in and then install my rootkit.
Yeah. And so from the perspective of like, can the kernel protect itself from a bad driver? No. And let's say you have a bug in some driver and all you need is, let's say you don't even need admin or root privileges. You just need access to the Crowdstrike user on the box and then you get access. There you go. Like that is an attack vector into the kernel that can give you privilege escalation beyond that of just getting root on a box.
The thing which blows me away with this one, more than anything else, and I'm curious, was there a way, knowing what you know with it? So the only way to fix this, I shouldn't say that. There's a bunch of different ways to fix this. One of them, which came out pretty early on, which Microsoft recommended, which I found I was just tickled by it, was reboot the system 15 times.
Yeah.
Did you see that one? I couldn't tell if it was a meme at first, but then you look it up and it is actually a recommended Microsoft thing. And it was like, holy crow. But this one became really difficult because the main fix was reboot into safe mode, go in, manually delete these files. If you reboot into safe mode, you're not going to be able to RDP in, or you might be able to do it with networking and this whole back and forth thing. That's not the hard one. Like everyone keeps pointing to that one as that is the hard one. Holy crow, no. Because if your system is in Azure, like say it's in an Azure container, and you followed best security practices, I can't like unmount that volume because the volume's encrypted. And I can't run that thing. So now I have to go track down wherever my keys are. If you use the generic key or you use specialty keys, I need to grab the OS down. I need to unlock it. I need to decrypt it. I need to find these things. I need to reattach it. Like this was so not an easy fix. And I'm curious.
No.
I know your site, you don't have like all the research and they haven't really posted it. Is there any fix you could do is there any fix you could actually push? Because you're not even the operating system won't load. You're dead in the water.
There's like this is if you have access to we'll say, a server in the cloud is typically managed through a BMC, which is it's like baseboard management computer or something. And it's a separate, anyone who runs servers knows about these, right? It's a separate little computer, a sister board that has control over the power cycling ability on the box. And you typically also have the ability to like go into a small KVM in the BMC and get early boot and go into the BIOS and then get like the boot sequence. And this is what they mean by, boot in safe mode, right? But if you're on a server and you're on Linux, you could like go into the grub loading menu and then say like, don't load drivers or exclude this driver or do that, which is somewhat equivalent to going into safe mode, which is to say, no, there's no easy way to do this without going into each of these machines and saying, don't load this driver or don't, because I have to imagine, because of the position of what CrowdStrike software, or what is it called, Falcon is doing, it's probably loaded very early in the boot process and is used to validate the rest of the system during boot to detect if anything critical has changed, and probably shoots off warnings if it detects that. And so if it is one of the first drivers to load, and then it monitors every other loaded driver, no, you don't have an option of doing something else. You just have to go in manually. And we're seeing this now. Apparently, Delta Airlines is still struggling with this. I mean, anyone who's reading the headlines and watching, like TikToks and YouTube shorts knows that people are still like, wow, 5,000 flights canceled. Good job.
What's nuts too, you got to see how big CrowdStrike is on everything. Because I was laughing. My car was in the shop. I had to go get a rental at Enterprise. Enterprise was down. So it was weird that this started, and then talking to laymen on this was very interesting. Because again, you and I have a lot of like, it was government conspiracy where they're coming for our jobs. Like it was just super goofy where people are like, oh, this was a cyber event. And you're like, no, it was a patch. Yeah. They're like, well, how do you know that? This was a piece of cybersecurity software. It's made to defend against those things. And you're like, oh gosh, my brain hurts trying to explain this. It was amazing how far reaching it was. And it affected tons of just like non-technical people. That's what's amazing to me, is like trying to explain a piece of cybersecurity software that's supposed, like, I am amazed at this point how the next conversations are going to go, because CrowdStrike is not inexpensive. CrowdStrike is very, very expensive. And Microsoft Defender, Microsoft has been very, very much pushing Microsoft Defender, giving lots of free and enterprise upgrades and things like that. And it is a remarkably hard thing as a CISO to say, this is the best of breed. This has kept us defended. This will keep us online longer than Microsoft Defender will be. And then it's like, yeah, but that's the thing. That's the thing that just brought us down. Like, that is going to be a very hard sell this year.
Yeah. So on your first point, this is a great example of Hanlon's razor, right? Never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity, which is like that's the thing that I've been telling people if they come up with like, oh, do you think it was an attack? I was like, no, it was just somebody being stupid. And they're like, well, it seems very wide reaching for it to be stupid. And it was just like, go look at the history of any kind of engineering, and you will find extraordinary failures that ended catastrophically out of pure stupidity. This is an example of one of them. So that's on that side. But sorry, your second point was, remind me.
Was it, my second point was, I don't remember. I was looking at Gator's response here, and maybe this will trigger. Gator says, the tabletops from these issues are going to be amazing. So the two ones which no one had on their bingo card, I guarantee no one had this on their bingo card. If you ever find anyone who actually called this, was COVID. No one had that on their bingo card unless it was zombie apocalypse. Like, we have done tabletop exercises, and we use the zombie apocalypse as like, here's one. But it's weird when that one strikes so close to true. The other one is now going to be on that bingo card, which has not been played yet, is your endpoint protection hoses all of your systems.
Yeah.
Like, and
I
they
mean, no,
won't
I mean, like,
reboot.
yeah, and they won't reboot. Like you functionally, like, this is a great example of a catastrophic cyber attack. Like, you could take the results of this and war game it out as if you had been crippled in this way, and seeing where you're, and like, this is a good example of, I hate to, no, I don't hate to pick on CrowdStrike. They fucked up. Like,
Yeah, they did.
you can take this fuck up by CrowdStrike and extrapolate it out, and start asking the questions. Okay, CrowdStrike fits into the cybersecurity picture in this way. Who else fits that type of description? And what else are we not seeing? There's a lot you can learn from the after action of this, and extrapolate it out into other pieces of software. Right?
No,
And
you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that
no,
because that's a terrifying path to go down. Like,
you're missing my point. You can take the after action on this and learn a lot about what other pieces of the infrastructure are critical and not properly vetted.
no, my point was going down third-party software. The farther you go down in every piece of software, you hit
True.
a third party which can't be trusted. Like, let's go super far down. You hit like things
So
like,
I'm a
okay,
kernel dev, so maybe not.
no, it's good. You say that, but like, look at like most PLCs. Most PLCs run like some form of BusyBox on them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
BusyBox I think it's open source, all of that. But then, like, I think it wasn't BusyBox. There was another one, which, you know what they tested it with? Like, when they actually went to run testing, their unit tests against it. So it wasn't the main one. It was Faker.js. They used Faker.js to then test all their stuff. And then Faker.js got malicious code into it. So, like, as far down as you go, and you do this reconnaissance and going, okay, what piece of software, like, things like the network driver will be a piece of third-party code, or like, it is amazing how many pieces, and it reminds me of the XKCD comic where it's like all the different pieces and all the enterprise stuff, and then there's like a toothpick holding the whole thing up.
Yeah.
And it's like some person in their basement's code that was written 8 years ago, and they've died since then. Like,
Yeah.
and no one knows how it works.
No, I mean, you're not wrong in that sense. And I'm obviously taking a different view now, and you can actually go on like the kernel mailing list and see some of these, we'll say, philosophical debates. There's a reason why the open source community tries to push back against things like closed source drivers, and tries to create an environment that not just encourages people to have open source drivers, but almost, but not quite, forces them to do it if they want good, stable control over what they're trying to do with hardware. And the result of that is, okay, you're going to have new hardware come out, or you're going to have new things come out, and you get a little one-off driver that is functionally third-party code in its upstream. But slowly over time, it becomes generalized into a much more hardened piece of code, and that can do more general good things for people. And so you're not wrong. Like, and I have to quote somebody who said this to me not long ago. If you took a random piece of kernel code and you stared at it long enough, you would probably find 13 bugs. And I honestly believe that's true of any software, but the fact that it's true of kernel software is also like, that's just true of software. So yes, you're not wrong.
I still laugh that it was I'm probably going to quote you wrong on this one, but when we were talking, there was a piece of there was one of the instructions you ran across where the expected output was an exception. That the entire purpose of that in order for it to succeed, the goal was to actually cause it to create the exception, which then gets handled. And it was, I know I've seen this in web, which is really funny, where yeah.
Like that is an anti-pattern, where if you're writing code where, like, if you're doing like a try catch, and the catch is there to catch an exception that you are expecting to be thrown, not as a like, oh, in worst case scenario, we'll handle this because there's some bug below it. But if you're expecting an exception to be thrown, and in a bad way, that's an anti-pattern. and it's unfortunately extremely common in like Python.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot in
Um,
Python, and that was always really funny.
it's also
Look,
absurdly inefficient.
yeah, Dave brings up a really good point. Yeah, tracking all the dependencies, which just had log4j, because it's a dependency of a dependency of a dependency of a dependency, which is way down there that doesn't even show up in your code. Oh my gosh, it was
Guarantee log4j is still floating out there. Like it's not like you
yeah,
find this
oh
and
yeah.
you're like, oh, that's a forever bug. Like that'll never get fully fixed.
Eternal blue. I still run across systems which have
Yeah.
eternal blue on them, and that was what XP. Like those vulnerabilities last forever, and Log4j will be there
So
forever.
I don't want to spend the whole stream on CrowdStrike, but I will say this: like this is so devastating to CrowdStrike because they had a log update or we'll say signature or some kind of routine update that caused a blue screen to occur. Now it is in the forefront of every administrator's mind and every IT professional's mind that any update they get from CrowdStrike could fucking hose their whole system. Like that's
You say
devastating.
any update.
Like,
It's not like one more thing too. It's not like the update was like pushed, like they had to hit the button. This was an automatic update. The Falcon did this itself. Like there's not like this. Like I think it was posted earlier saying talking about here we go is talking about like SolarWinds you can manually update. This is a really great point. But, it puts you behind if you're not on the bleeding edge. And a software like this has to be on the bleeding edge. Yeah, it's terrifying. It is. And the thing which I'm super curious about is the fallout of this is right now, I'm sure CrowdStrike signs zillions of legalese, and it is buried in there saying, if we crash a system in BSOD, it's not our fault. I cannot imagine that extends, and there's going to be things in there, which is negligence or usually it's with malice, it's not going to be covered. Negligence, cyber insurance usually is covered.
Yeah, negligence is probably covered. Gross negligence is probably not covered, and that'll be the big legal debate.
And this is the question, because there is far-reaching things. There is things like Delta going down and all of it, but there was multiple 911 lines that went down. That's terrifying. And there's a few of my clients which always surprise me. We'll do like a security architecture review, and when we're talking to them, we'll ask the question like, what happens if this goes down? And it always amazes me when they're like, nothing. We just go back to paper. And I'm like, oh wow, that's an interesting. I didn't realize you could even do that still. And it's like there's certain services like 911 and other ones you go, okay, well, what is the recovery on this? And I'll be curious to see how much CrowdStrike gets hit into oblivion with this. And I don't know if we've seen the end of their stock price going down. Again, not financial advice or all that fun stuff, but like all the renewals are going to be way harder to sell. CISOs already have to really, really hard. It is a hard sell for CrowdStrike when it's 100 times more than Microsoft Defender. And I'm not saying it's not as good, but it is a much, much harder sell. But as you said, we're like 38 minutes in. We probably should talk Defcon. Is that where you want to go?
Yeah, I was thinking Defcon, and I wanted to pull up the talk schedule because I found I don't know if you've gone through the talk schedule.
I have not.
But kind of interesting, the number of government agencies that are giving talks.
Really?
And more explicitly, the number of talks that DT is hosting as kind of a two-person panel, if you will, or like a fireside chat with said agencies, or current and former administration officials.
Are you going to pull it
which
up?
I found,
I can share it out.
Yeah, if you want to hold on one second, I'll. There we go.
I'll preview this on my other screen, so I'm not like just flashing everyone.
Put up a fresh goatsy, right?
All right, where are we? Do video source. Got our screen. There we go. Publish.
All right,
that should be live now.
I'm gonna like very quickly go through just the things that DT is on, and point out what he's doing, and then I'll go through and show you the number of other government agencies. So, Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Tech, fireside chat with DNSA and Neuberger. Unplugged Cocktails with Cyber, Jeff and Jen, Director of Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, so CISA. There was another one, I think. DT and Rob Joyce. The former NSA and White House cyber official will engage with DT to analyze the evolving state of global cyber threats. And that's the closing ceremonies. And then I think there was, I'm not going to be able to get through it all. Founding director at Vanderbilt's Institute of National Security. There's like, if you go through here and look at the number of like federal positions that people have held that are giving talks, it's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is this year versus other years?
I don't want to get into politics, but politics have made it more tenable to invite, we'll say, competent people to have discussions without fear of, we'll say, blowback. And I'm not going to say like we have a perfect relationship with the situation, but I think they brought up a good point in prior. You know, I'm done. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but yeah, if you guys go take a look, go take just a browse through really quick and see the number of feds, if you will, that are coming to have chats, not just as a talk, but like talks with DT or talks with other parts of the industry as kind of a panel. I would say it's not something we haven't seen before. We obviously have, but I feel like we're finally in kind of a, I'm not going to say welcoming fashion, but like maybe a symbiotic situation. And I think DT has said this before. At a certain point, you have to grow up and realize that the things we're doing aren't just all fun and games. And you have to, you know, we have to build bridges, not tear them down all the time. You know, at a certain point, you run out of bridges to burn.
It was cool yesterday. Yeah, I think it was last year. There was the Policy Village. And the first time I heard of this, I was like, my knee jerk was like, oh, it's like NIST compliance, ISO compliance, like that. Like, no, it was like government officials coming in talking about here are the policies currently in flight that we're looking to introduce. They're doing the Policy Village again this year, and I'm curious what will end up happening with some of the policies around AI. Because those are the ones which just blow my mind of going, there's legislators now passing laws to a technology they really have no idea what it is or what it's capable of. And then
here's another one. Sorry. National Cyber Director at White House Office of the National Cyber Director. Wait, National Cyber Director at White House Office of the National Cyber Director.
Assistant to the regional manager.
Yeah. And then Jay Healy as well. Yeah, if you go through and just like search for director, you'll find all of them. And there's like apparently like during the first 17 years of his service with the CIA, right? Previously served executive director of the NSA. Like these are not small names, right? Like, we have a special assistant director to at defense at DARPA. Oh, and in fact, one of my old colleagues that works at, I think it's called like ADARPA or whatever, is going to be there. It's basically the moonshot agency for cancer research and other health research. He's giving a presentation, and that looks like it's going to be great. Like a lot of these talks, like just to be clear, a lot of these talks are not like big putsy policy talks, like big snore fests. I think they look really good, and I'm going to be interested to see how it goes.
It is interesting to me. I don't know why this connected in my head, but thinking about Scav Hunt is usually, and contests are usually in the contest area, and now everything is the Scav Hunt area. And I'll be curious if we see a quadricopter just roaming around with
I wonder
paraphernalia
what
dangling from it.
rules. Well, first of all, I think flying. I used to say this. I think flying lawnmowers over people is not smart. Um, so hopefully, no one is flying drones inside over the crowd. That would be, they hurt from experience. They hurt when they fall out of the sky onto you. I have done this to myself. Cannot recommend.
You asked.
Yeah.
You asked. Oh, go on.
No, go for it.
You asked a question earlier, and it's totally taking a left turn. But you asked this. What was it last week? Have you ever picked a password so good, then were sad that you couldn't share it?
Yeah, I mean, I just went through a whole refresh period where I was doing, reassigning, cycling passwords, things like that. And I had a moment where I picked a password and I was just like, I don't know why. This is the first time I have ever experienced this emotion. I had a feeling I was just like, I got to go tell Michelle about this password. And then I was like, what did I just say? Like, what did I just think? How stupid. And then I got sad because it was such a good password. But like, I knew I could never share it with anyone. Like maybe 20 years from now, I'll be chuckling to myself and then I'll tell somebody, hey, I once picked a password that was this. And I'm like, what a stupid thought to have. But this kind of turned into a second question. And you brought this up. It's kind of similar of like, oh, have you ever popped a shell on a system or hacked something and you got all excited and then you got really sad because you knew you would never be able to tell anyone the story because of NDAs or whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of those ones. The password one though, we do a lot of password cracking. We do passive. We have Project Mariana, which is all the dark web reconnaissance stuff, which has a lot of passwords in it. And then we do, like for instance, RockU 2024 came out, and like most of that dictionary is just complete crap. But we'll run that against Active Directories. But like it is amazing how personal passwords can get. And it will be like, some of them are like sad. It'll be like the person's like, a daughter or like the person's like dog and stuff like that, where it's like but what they are because it'll be like the person's year. And you can Google this information, then go, oh, this was like their wife who passed away like 30 years ago or whatnot. And you can see all this information in passwords. It's amazing how revealing they are. The one, though, I can tell you about, which I'm very, very proud of. It's not a password. It's all the servers inside my house. They're all named after the 7 deadly sins. So, like, the pen test box I have is Wrath. My box, which has a lot of my media on it, is Gluttony. So, like, I have all of these. I do not have a lust. I refuse to have a lust.
I mean, you'll find a reason to have a lust.
But it's
my systems are all named after Slayer's Darkstar weapons. So Galvera, Goranova, Bodegar, things like that. So yeah, I also have a theme.
Yeah, those are the ones you can tell about. The only one which the hack, which I is so pertinent to the CrowdStrike one, is one of the companies I worked at. It was a third-party software, which it was before Windows Update really had like the Win servers and whatnot, which you would patch gazillions of systems. It was for distribution of patches for systems, like for distribution of patches of like Adobe, like so when you have 100,000 systems that need to pull down an Adobe patch, so it doesn't just like crush Adobe. You push the patch down and then it distributes it. Now, so that server doesn't get crushed, it worked as an internal torrent server. So all the systems would then communicate. We were asked to test it. And it was totally like can you guys just like test this? Like, it's fine, but we should probably test it. And we found like baby's first buffer overflow because it would spin up a torrent server of like / the patch name. And if you did like / 3000 A's, it caused like straight up EIP like overwrite. Just boop. I can now baby's first. And when we asked, we're like, yeah, you guys, they need to patch this. And there's other ones too. We should probably do this. And the room went completely quiet. And we're like, well, okay, like it's no big deal. They can patch this. They're like, we've already deployed this to about 8,000 critical systems.
No.
It's like, okay, well, how? Oh yeah, so it was one of those ones that was definitely reverted very fast. But that was probably one of my favorites. Again, that was kind of like skirting over some of the details, but the password one is there's been some really really fun passwords. Usually mine I had a theme for a while.
There's a everyone has a theme, I feel like. Passwords are such garbage. So I'll never forget my favorite exploit I've ever seen. It's like 30 years old. It's like old Cisco switches and old Cisco routers had a bug in their terminal where it's called like the 34A's attack or something. It's like if you put 34A's in, it just gives you root. Like it just fails open. It's all hilarious.
It was like the ones with like the ones which always blow me away is when like sudo has a buffer overflow. Where like some of those
was a
ones
recent one with sudo, wasn't? There was a recent one with sudo, right?
Yeah, there was shell shock.
Good. Yeah,
where it's like so many of them. Yeah, they're like, and they're not complicated. Like usually, it's most of the reasons they come back in though is like it was patched, and then they're caught because someone pushed a fix which unpatched that. So that's why they're caught pretty quick. Like there's other ones there. Like the thing which is always amazing is like the hindsight is like what's the quote? Everyone knows yesterday's lottery numbers. Like it always amazes me for some of these buffer overflows that go forever. Like they're never seen. And then it's like, oh, if I put 21 A's in this field, all of a sudden I'm just escalated to admin. Those ones always amaze me going back and going like, how is this ever a thing? I think
they don't surprise me because oftentimes, let me put it this way, oftentimes they're buried in a very specific interaction. And it's like anything else, like no one ever asks the question, what if I just flip this bit, right? Like that's what happens. Just gets passed.
My probably another favorite story while we're doing story hour was they needed anytime the person troubleshot their enterprise firewall and checked on which rules were running and which rule was causing it to fail, would throw an any in, and then slowly move the deny all the way up. So we started monitoring it, and what we started noticing was a big chunk of their network, like their entire development network, would just open up randomly online for like a couple hours and then go offline. And we submitted it, but like every time we went to retest it, it would go down. So we set up a monitor to do screenshots and everything like that. But yeah, to find out, like, imagine troubleshooting this thing was a bug to find out the person who's troubleshooting the bug was doing the any all the way up.
Yeah.
So
well, no, it's not like my favorite. Ones. My favorite will always be Apple's double go to fail. And I'm not going to say this is the reason, but like, I remember that happening, and then a lot of compilers starting to build in tab checking to validate whether or not you have suspicious tabbing in your code. So it was the first time compilers, not the first time, but like one of the major times that a huge feature went out in compilers that basically said, hey, I see you have a tab here and you think this thing is under an indented like a branching it, like an if clause, but this is not guarded by any if clause. Are you sure that you want to do that? And it shoots a warning. And I have a deep down feeling that it may have been the result of like people turning that bit on may have been the result of double go to fail. If you're familiar with that, there was a major thing with Apple's where there was a failure condition. I think it was not Heartbleed, but it was like some encryption or some secure login that it just always failed open. And it was because somebody had copy and pasted go to fail twice. And the second one was not protected by the indent because there were no brackets. And so it just always failed open. Very interesting bug. And it went unnoticed for quite some time.
There's a lot of those in web, especially when it comes to validating JWTs. So JWTs are a way of like high level, a way of both doing authentication and authorization for your application in a web. And the typical pattern within JavaScript or Node.js to check these things is if it does not validate, return an error. If it does not come from the source you're expecting, return fail. If it does not do this, so you can have all your checks way up at the top, and then you do anything by the time you get to the bottom, you go, okay, it's fully tested this way. And it's amazing how many times like people have forgot to do a return. Where it'd be like if do, and then it just continues on, or it breaks or something like that, or it comes back. And there's a lot, like even taking that whole thing and moving it into a function, and then the function doesn't actually stop. Like they don't await it. So the promise is never returned. It just continues on with the rest of the code. There is there's a lot of those.
We got 5 minutes. Let's go back to DEF CON. What are you looking forward to at DEF CON other than seeing your hacker family? Hearts go up. What's up, buddy?
This is the part which always, I was thinking about this. There is, again, AJR, again, working out. There we go. I just drop it again. I've been listening to AJR, and there's this great song by them called Come Hang Out. And if you listen to AJR, do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And there's this great song I listen to at the end of my workouts called Come Hang Out. And the song is legitimately about him going, hey, no, I should I go for more clicks this year? Should I just listen to my click in the ear? Like pretty much just saying, I'm going to build up the band. And then everyone keeps telling him, come hang out. And he goes, no, like I'm busy with this stuff. And every time I hear this song, it's always I purposely do it as the last song. I think of DEF CON because I'm thinking about like every year at DEF CON, I want to hang out with fascinating people. There's so many fascinating people at DEF CON. And I swear maybe it's an age thing because the first time I started going to DEF CON, it was like, I want to go to the talks. I want to go to the villages. I want to learn. I want to do this. And now all I want to do is just hang out with more and more people. I don't care if it's with photos. I don't care if it's videos. I don't care if it's just conversations. Like one of my favorite interactions at DEF CON, like for like videos, I almost can tell it in videos that we do, the ones where I truly want to do this one, like, and not that I want to do all of them, but like some of them are like, hey, go to this village and do a video of this person. Cool. Like it's fun. But when it's like going to QM and finding that like you have Queen Me, this random pinata just sitting there, you're like, there is a story here. Or like most people don't realize there's whole traditions around goons, around how many years you have been there. And this is, I don't think these are like secret or anything, but like your second year or your third year or your fifth year, like the 10th year, I know this is like a big one. Like when you have 10 years as a goon, there's this whole ceremony where you get married to the conference.
No, that's 20.
That's 20
years.
Oh, it's 20.
Yeah, 20.
And then like
it's 20 years you get married to the conference.
And like these little pieces, like that's what I'm looking forward to most every year. Like I feel like, how long have we been doing video at DEF CON? It hasn't been that long.
Yeah, this will be third year?
Third or fourth year. I think where one was,
I think we've done it
28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Fifth year. This will be the fifth year. Because I think you started the second year. You started the fourth year.
Yeah, I started here. So this will be my fourth. This will be your fifth.
And the thing which is amazing about it to me is every year it started with like, what is the interesting stuff I can gather, to now it's like all about what is the most interesting and most fascinating people I can interact with. So that's what I'm looking forward to. More fascinating people.
And it's not to say that some people are more or less interesting than others. It's like it changes year to year. That's why, for example, I brought up the relationship with the feds being in the talks and the fact that DT is doing kind of, co-talks with them as very interesting, because it shows an evolution in the conference that is like, that's interesting. Like, I wonder how people are going to, react to that. Because there's a lot of interesting people with a lot of interesting positions on it. And that's what I'm most excited to see is with the venue change, with the talk change, not the talk change, but like the slate of talks coming in, and some of the technical ones do look good. I'll say that. And the evolution of having people all in the same room that previously were not in the same room is going to be fascinating, as you like to quote me. Fascinating. But
no, I grabbed that from Guardians of the Galaxy. That fascinating. Look,
Nothing's going over my head. I will catch it.
I would catch it. I think yeah, I mean I know it's goofy. I know it's goofy. It's like oh the people. But like I legitimately love interacting with people, and it's so weird for me because I am an introvert. I don't like people. People are the worst. Like we have declared this. People are the worst. Defcon, they're not people. That's the way you say it. They're not people. No,
They're hackers.
They're hackers. And I think that's the one is seeing hacker. Like I think the coolest thing about DEF CON to me is seeing people do what they love and what they're good at. Like you have all those circles we've talked about, like the things you enjoy doing, the things you're actually good at, the things you're actually paid to do. Like all of these things is you find this little tiny circle, and that tends to be like where everyone wants to stay. And at DEF CON, you're rewarded to be in that little tiny circle, and you get to interact with people who just are just geeking out about whatever it is. That's the part I'm looking forward to. And cool. You know, and with Make It Hacking, the other piece of this reminds me is all the amount. Like there is so much little. I don't want to say crap. There's so much little crap. There is so many little tiny like minuscule projects, which are actually giant projects. And I use the example like someone manufactures a badge. It took them the entire year to program this thing and do it and manufacture and silkscreen and all this crap that goes. And it's almost like this little tiny thing that goes completely unnoticed to the rest of the con, but it's giant. It's so much effort in this little tiny thing. It will be like a coin or something someone minted for the thing, and there's the whole story around it. I love finding those. And again, Make It Hacking is a perfect example of this, is some of the badges that they come up with are like, oh gosh, the security one. Like, you're a terrible person for that one, by the way. Terrible person. Which is like the security one, which just sets off all the alarms when you walk it through the store. It's like it had all the security things on it, which like when you walk out, the thing just goes haywire. Definitely don't sneak that onto a person's bag. That would be bad.
Oh no.
In Vegas.
And the stickers. And of course the stickers. I'm looking forward to the stickers. I have new stickers this year. I have the gallery stickers, which I just ordered a bunch more, but I also have stickers now. And they are in the same style as the gallery stickers. So now you will have variety around.
Yeah, this is for anyone who doesn't know the story. I get lots of stickers, and I have two daughters. I have two young daughters who love stickers, love temporary tattoos, all of that stuff. And most stickers are very like, oh, you have one of these, you have two of these. But the one, and usually there's no fights over those ones. No, the ones they wanted of all of them were the Gowrie stickers. Just so happens to be that I had like 50 of them. I am still finding them in places. Like it's just like I'll be like underneath like my office, like on the bottom of my office, reaching for a cable, and this was the epitome of it. And I look up, and underneath this desk, the one right here, I have one stuck underneath. I have zero idea how it got there.
That's my calling card. I was actually in his office hiding under the table while he was streaming. He didn't know I was there. Or he did, and he was just very comfortable with it. One of the two.
So I don't know. There's so much I'm excited about. It always gets here right before right before I'm ready. I'm hoping Delta figures it out. I don't want to. I refuse to ever fly Spirit to DEF CON again after the crap they pulled. I'm flying Delta. Delta, please. I beg of you. I would love to not have my flight canceled.
I would make contingency plans. Gator brings up a good point. Sticker on the sticker walls only. Las Vegas Convention Center is going to be very picky about it. We will want to be back next year, so don't fuck it up. I'm curious to know. And like DEF CON's kind of moved on from here's the list of things you will have to pay for when you break it type situation. I wouldn't say they moved on it entirely. They definitely haven't moved on from googly eyes and stickers. I am interested to see how the Las Vegas Convention Center receives us.
I really wish Toxic Barbecue would have been nearby. Again, I think it's still way off in the boonies, where there was like the chance of it being closer. But I think, again, this one's way off there. I think this is the one I'm really worried about, is how fragmented the entire community is going to get when you're spread across Sahira, Rio, like all the hotels are all over the place.
Yeah.
And how many of a party or a gathering is going to be like way off in Timbuktu, and then you're going to have like a small group go out there. I'm hoping some of the official ones, Las Vegas. I don't know. This will be a year to find out where things end up being, and hopefully they're a little bit more easy and publicized and all of that. Hopefully the official ones are good.
I do hope the official parties are going to be at hotels and casinos that are along the tram line. That would be the best. That way you can go straight from the convention center directly to an event and then just ride the tram, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Monorail. There we go.
Monorail.
Whatever it's called. Monorail.
Yeah, I will say, hotels will be much better next year. I think we'll get more of an idea. I'll throw this one up on chat. I think we'll have a better idea of what hotels work best. And I use the example of when we were at Paris Bally's. I think it was Paris Bally's. My headset just went out. With Paris Bally's, it was like Saturday, and I realized I could cut off 20 minutes from my walk by walking through the pool. Like, instead of having to go all the way back and around, like it was like Thursday, or it was started Thursday. It was like Saturday morning, I found out I could just walk straight from like this one fancy elevator and skip 10 minutes. And I'd cut off another like 15 minutes by going through the pool. I think there's going to be a lot of those where people go, oh, I can legitimately cut my travel time a ton by doing that.
It was like that at Caesars too, because there was like, you had to, if you were staying in one piece of Caesars, you had to walk all the way around. And then like you had the option of going through the pool. And so most people walked through the pool, and then the casino put the quash on that because you're bothering the guests. And then we found out there was a sneaky elevator in the back corner that no one knew about, and especially event security did not know about. So they couldn't check for badges. But that was like the access elevator for stuff. I remember that. And then, I remember the going over to like Flamingo or whatever was a nightmare. But if you walked through the pool, it was like great.
Yeah, I feel like we just last year I finally got an idea of how to get around Caesars, and now it's switching. The nice thing is in theory,
just to make you angry.
Yeah, this is the only reason they moved. In theory, though, it will be nice. I'm hoping the food is decent on premises, like on the food court, and that it's big enough. But again, I go back to this thing should hold. I don't know how many people it can uphold at the max. It hosts enormous.
CES. It hosts CES, and CES hosts like 200,000 people. Now, granted, we're not taking over the entire convention center. I don't think we're going to have an issue.
Mm-hmm. No, there will be issues, just not with us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have issues. I have subscriptions. So,
with that, what's your final thoughts? We'll wrap up here.
I don't know if we are going to stream next week. Probably not, because I'll be at Otakon. So that is a anime conference, which I haven't been to in like a decade. So it used to be in Baltimore, and now it's in DC. They're also, I think this year is their 30th anniversary. So I think that's going to be lit. So that'll be interesting. So I won't be streaming next week for sure, because I'll be at Otakon, which means I will see you all at Defcon. And for the sake of Gator, love your hacker family.
In Gator, your OnlyFans. That's your subscription. Gator, what's the countdown? You have it. I need to know what it is. I don't actually have it. Yeah, what's the panic clock at? And then we'll find out. And then I think that's about it. My gosh. It is.
For people who don't know, Darknet, we always had a panic clock, panic clock till start of event. And that's what we're asking about. Who's on the panic team this year?
There's a lot. Again, I know a bunch of badge makers who this is the craziest year shipping stuff down, because crates and shipments usually have to get shipped by Monday. So that's getting crunch time. There's a lot. I don't have it. It's probably 3 plus 7, about 10 days, something like that. There's a lot to panic with. With that, we'll see you at DEF CON. Thanks for watching, and hack on.